1%, the worst approval rating of any Congress in recent history. I'm almost done. Thank you. Additionally, political scientists have produced statistics revealing that this Congress has been the most unproductive since 1947, and that it is the most polarized and divided legislative body since the period of Reconstruction following the Civil War in 1865. In a bid to sustain its futile legislative record, it now failed to prevent the spending sequester, which was a budget given that Congress itself created out of the realization that they can't produce a bipartisan budget that can effectively rein in government spending. In other words, their job. In essence, Congress realized it wasn't doing its job, wrote a law saying that it needed to do its job, and then didn't do its job. It was Albert Einstein who was credited with saying insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. As a result of Congress's failure, federal civilians will now take home 20% less pay across the board until the end of September. Despite rhetoric from some lawmakers about withholding their own pay until a budget is passed, don't believe it. They don't. They know full well that the 27th Amendment prohibits any law that decreases their salary until the next term. Please help me by contacting, and I sent this to your office, our local representatives and our national leaders, and letting them know what they are doing or failing to do is unjust and wrong. That government of the people, by the people, for the people, should be operating for the good of all the people, rather than just those that make the rules. Now, the budget's a question.
Let me answer in all fairness to all the people here. I got the gist. Okay, now, let me respond. We had some misinformation. First off, and then I'll get to the budget. You do get vested in retirement after 5 years. You do not get your full salary. That is bogus. You get it based on a federal percentage, just like everyone else. If you work 5 years, I think it's 1.5% or 2%. I don't remember. It's a calculation. It is not the full salary. That's the biggest, and I know people, I'm not saying it's you, wherever you got it, this is the blogosphere we live in today, instant news that is not factual. So, second, you pay for your medical benefits. Despite what people think, I paid last year $10,000 in premiums and co-pays, and I fight with insurance companies like everyone else. So I want to make sure that's clear. From our office, we have returned back over $1 million back to the Treasury over the last 5 years. Second, I did with my staff furloughed. I'm probably the only one in the U.S. Senate that, just as the federal workers took furlough, so did my staff, including me. Now, technically, I can't leave work, because everywhere I go, I'm on work. So I have to calculate out what that salary would have been and write a check to the U.S. Treasury. I'm the only senator who's done that. Because in all fairness, and the point is, we at the top need to also recognize what's happening around us. And also acknowledge, as my employees, we had a great debate in our office. And actually we had calls from other staff members from other offices mad at us. Because why? Because we set the precedent. And we said, if you're going to suffer, each department is a little different, as you know. Military got hit, FAA got saved, some others got hit. This issue of what we've done in our office is taking some responsibility here. Now, that does not take us away from our larger responsibility, which is the budget. The House, and I'll be very, you're right, it is very toxic in Washington, D.C. The partisan fighting is nothing I've ever seen in my public service life. It's unbelievable. But there is a newer group that's entered this equation. In the last 5 years, just to give you some data point, when I came into the U.S. Senate in 2009, January, I was the youngest member, 45 years old, and 99 in seniority, because Minnesota hadn't been decided yet. 5 years later, 65th in seniority, 35 more members behind me have already come in. And I'm middle-aged. The youngest member is 39. Why is this important? Because the demographics of the Senate are changing radically. And there are new people. I have probably sponsored more legislation with Republicans than probably any Democrat. I supported Rand Paul on auditing the feds. I've supported Bernie Sanders on changing the way the elections are run in this country so they're not so toxic with the amount of money being poured into elections. I will sponsor stuff with anybody who has an idea that I think is a good idea. John Thune, I remember, Republican. from South Dakota called me up one day and said, I got this bill I'm working on, and would love you to sponsor it, let me buy yours. He told me all about it. It's basically taking the TARP money, all that money that was given to banks and all that, to make sure when it was paid back, if it was paid back, it would go to the deficit reduction, rather than being respent on other stuff. So that's a great idea. I signed on and got a call from the majority whip, and he says, you may not sign on that bill. And I said, what are you talking about? He says, well, the Democrats aren't supporting it. I said, well, I'm supporting it. And I said, it's a bipartisan bill. He says, well, actually, it's 40 Republicans and you. I said, that's bipartisan. They got me so aggravated, I went out and got other Democrats to sign on to the bill. Now, the result is, where did that TARP money go, which almost all has been paid back? Deficit reduction. Because where we are today is not the environment that moves this country forward, for all the reasons you said. Because when all you're having is fights because you don't like the person who introduced the bill, is a problem. And I will side with, I like a bill, and I'm now on the Appropriations Committee. The way appropriations usually work is the majority decides how the bills will look, the minority participates, and hopefully they will vote with you. But the way the table is a square table, senior members on top, junior members on the bottom. We call ourselves the back third. The back third will decide what we think is right, not what we're dictated to. And we have voted with Republicans, and Republicans have voted with us. And we think there's an issue that we need to move forward on. That is not said well, I can tell you, with the chair of the committee at times. But there is a new tone that started to feed into the Senate, literally in the last couple of years. And think about it, 35 new senators in less than 5 years. And after this year, this next cycle, there'll be 10 more, just because of announced retirements. Now, saying that sequestration is a big problem. Now, I voted for sequestration knowing the negative impacts. I was not one of those that sat around and said, oh my God, if we vote for this, then it will make us do our job. No. This is what it's going to do. And it's going to be tough. Here is our problem. When you do a budget cut in 2 months, very damaging. Because you don't have 12 months to work it. Now, sequestration is not the right approach in the long term, straight across the board. Because maybe, one program can do a 2% cut, one might do a 7% cut, one might do a 4% cut because of different needs, and that's how we should be dealing with these budgets, not the straight across. But what we have at Congress right now is polarization that I've just never seen in my political experience. And I've had everything from the Anchorage Assembly, with multiple different assembly members, different mayors, being mayor now in the Senate. But it has impacted. We've tried to reduce those furloughs where we could. When the military first announced, I think it was 21 days, and maybe 27 days. 7 was the original, right? I think we got down to 7. I can't remember the exact number, but
It was September 1st.
September 1st. And you're right. The call is different September 1st. We're not waiting to the end of the year to make this decision. Now, the challenge is the Appropriations Committee, which I sit on, there's 12 appropriation bills. We have passed 11 of them with solving this problem. The challenge will be, we've been on one of those bills for 3.5 weeks. We have 12 total bills to do. It is very difficult to get these out of the way. And the House is run into a roadblock over there because they have multiple factions fighting each other over there. The Senate has passed the budget. The House has passed the budget. But to be very frank about this, we have called for almost every day we're on the floor, we have said, let's go to a conference committee. What is the conference committee? You take the House budget, you take the Senate budget, you all sit down together in public, and you work it out. But we have had objections from the other side to move to this. They won't go to it. And it's because they say, well, we should just take the House budget and just pass that. Well, no, we've passed our budget. The House has passed their budget. Everyone should get in a room. And here's one of the reasons why they don't want to do it. To be very frank about it, those meetings are public. You'll see them on C-SPAN. And guess what? You'll have the minority and the majority, House and Senate, all in a room. That's the way it should be done. And I support that. I have constantly said this. You know, we were banged over the head for 3 years because Democrats didn't pass a budget. Okay, we passed one. Now let's get on with it. They don't want to do it. Now, I will tell you, the Appropriations Committee passed an amendment to one of our bills that said to do this. We can get the bill up on the floor. Because in the Senate, it takes one person can object and stop everything. And that rule is a problem. That's this whole filibuster issue. This is a problem. So on the sequestration, we have to solve this problem. Because you can't keep just cutting at the bone and hope it all is going to work out. Because it's not. And sooner or later, as you're feeling it now in your own personal income, individuals will see it on services that are no longer available. I don't care if it's from Head Start, to road construction, to making sure the FAA is fully funded. I go through the list. So we have a big challenge here. But there is a group of us in a bipartisan effort that are trying our best to figure out how we can move this train forward. And I hate to say this, a big chunk of it is some people have been there a little too long and they're stubborn. And they have a view. Them and us. A lot of us new people are just kind of like, hey, we're going to disagree at times. But we got to get the train moving because it's going to have an impact and ripple effect. So September, October will be the showdown on the budget. You're going to see it, you're going to feel it. Because we're going to have some direct conversation on how we're going to solve this problem. Because we cannot continue to do this for another 9 years, not 1 year. This is a 10-year deal. Every year you cut 8%, so there's nothing left. You're not doing what is needed in this country. Number 2, let me pause here as you get up. Give me 3 more people to stand up. 5, 6, 7. Okay, we'll be back at it. I'm sorry, it's the only way I can, otherwise you go, you called me, you never got me. So I'm putting responsibility a little bit on your hands. Go.
Senator Begich, my name is Patricia Cook, and I'd like to say, first of all, that I'm proud of the work that both you and Senator Murkowski appear to be doing to move beyond the, and I forgive this, insane partisanship in Congress in order to get things accomplished. I'm a volunteer teacher with the literacy program, so my particular interest is in immigration, and I'd like you to address with the status of immigration reform proposals, particularly your views, how reform will affect Alaska and education, and when we might see any changes.
You bet. First off, on your comment, Senator Murkowski and I work together on a lot of issues. And, when you think about the Alaskan issue, your delegation is unified. I mean, in a lot of ways, it would be great if Congress operated this way. We may have our differences. We have those discussions. There's no question about that. I've been on late night calls with her. She's been on calls with me, trying to figure out how to make some things happen. But at the end of the day, we're focused on what's important to Alaska, so we're going to do it. We're going to make it happen, or attempt to. If Congress operated more like that, it would be a breath of fresh air, to be very frank with you. And there is an undertow of that happening. You just don't see it yet. I think by the next cycle or this next year, you're going to start seeing more of that because there's a high degree of frustration. So thank you for that comment. On immigration reform, the Senate has passed a bill, a bipartisan piece of legislation that's sitting over in the House right now. And what the House is wanting to do is take segments of it. The part that deals with the DREAM Act, which is young people who are here not by their own desires, but by their parents who came here or a parent who brought them. And now they're here, they're going to school, they graduate, and we tell them, go back to their home country. Even though we talk to the military, they love to have these kids because of the incredible diversity that's within this group. So they're trying to split it up right now, with border protections the first thing, and then kind of move through the process. We believe that's not. Our view is, whatever they pass, then we'll go to conference on this. And I think we will on this one go to conference. And we'll try to figure out the right path right here. My view is you got to keep it all together. Because it's a complicated problem. When you push here, something pops up here. You give a little here, something triggers here. So you got to kind of keep it comprehensive. For Alaska, for example, there's a piece in there that we were very aggressive, St. Murkowski and I, to make sure that if there are not people within a region or community for fish processing plants, then they can hire individuals who are immigrants to our country, or temporary workers. But we made sure local hire available. And guess what's happening with our fish processing plants right now? Because they can't do it right now. They don't have enough workers processing the fish. Some of the plants. This is a problem. So we need to fix this, and we have a fix there for that. We also, at the end of the day, whoever goes through this process of this new immigration bill, which is a 13-year process, should have the right to become a citizen at the end if they do everything what they're supposed to, which is pay their taxes, back and current, pay their fines, they got to pay a lot of fees, they go to the back of the line, they got to learn English. There's a whole list of things that immigrants of today don't necessarily even have to do. But they don't go in front of anyone. I know that's one of the rumor mills out there. Oh, they all jump. No, end of the line. They gotta have a job. They gotta be working, and they gotta be productive in the communities they live in. There's a lot of criteria before they can become U.S. citizens 13 years out. Now, saying that, we also have a huge amount of border protection that's been added to the southern border. I get that. But we got to be careful we don't overdo it. We'll probably have a border patrol officer every 3 feet. I mean, that's the rate we're going. The border has had less people coming over the last 3 years than ever before. It's gone down. I don't care what the blogosphere say, that's the fact. But we need to utilize new technologies. And that's a big part of the border security, is new technologies. So you don't have to have all these people. There's some opportunities there. The fence issue is a big debate, build a fence, let's build a taller ladder. I mean, that's one of the arguments. So use technology. This is a better way to manage it. The other thing is employers who know when they hire undocumented workers need to be prosecuted. When they knowingly hire them. This happens a lot, but very few do we prosecute. It's easier to probably get bit by an alligator and be prosecuted if you know and hire undocumented workers. That's a fact. So we need to make sure that's done and give some tools to businesses to make sure they can verify where they can individual workers. So that's the gist of the bill, where it's at, pieces. I actually feel pretty good that we're moving down a path. And we added one piece on the education piece, which I think is very important. We have these numbers of people we want to bring in to take over certain fields because we don't have enough people there. One of the pieces in the bill is ensure that we're also training our young people in this country for the jobs that we're asking people to come here to fill, because we don't have people to fill them. So why not train our own? That's a big component that I was very supportive of, because otherwise we're just going to keep raising the number and less of our people are working. And we should have first priority to make sure our people are working first. Number 3. You got to remember your number. You don't? Your number 3? Okay. This is it. Okay, number 3 I still have. 1, 2. Did I skip 3? 0, 1. Oh, that's right. There we go.
My name is Michael Chambers, and I stand in respectful opposition to much of what you said here, Mark. And I want to specifically tell you that I'm not a Republican plant. I'm the vice chair of the Alaska Libertarian Party, so I address you in that regard. With regard to the elementary and secondary act,
No child left behind. No, it is.
Okay, that particular act was touted as a bipartisan bill from Ted Kennedy and George Bush coming together. And now you stand in opposition to No Child Left Behind, which is part of that act. And in particular, I'm going to tell you that Common Core is, in fact, No Child Left Behind on steroids. Okay, so if you're in opposition to No Child Left Behind, you certainly should be in opposition to Common Core. That's federal legislation. And in the state of Alaska, our Constitution says the legislation of education here in the state belongs to the state legislature, not to the federal government. And then you also made specific reference that No Child Left Behind that was working, that our position within the world would be going up. I would suggest to you that in 1977, we were first or second in the world, and then there was enacted the Department of Education. So if you want to look at a timeline, look at the Department of Education. I would suggest that abolishing it might do something. with regard to, you talked about waivers. One of the problems with you supporting waivers, one of the things about waivers is that it in fact bound the children in a failing school. Okay, so if that school was failing, then the parents had an opportunity to get their children out of that failing school. And by granting a waiver, you also took away that right to that parent to take their children out of the school. As far as with school choice, okay, this is coming up in education. When you're talking about having opportunities in the future, I would suggest the free market is substantially better than any dictate from the federal government with regard to education. So I would highly suggest that if you want to talk about free market and advancement in education and vocation and all these programs, I would suggest that you support the school choice in education, because that gives parents the choice. It all comes about group things. When you're talking about no child left behind, you're talking about common core, you're talking about federal thing. What school choice is here is the right of the parent to make a decision about how they want to have their children educated. I'm certainly sure that you go with Jacob. You also said that you were taking, I was keeping an educational dialogue, but you said you take responses from other issues. I want to talk to you very clearly from a veteran perspective. You consider yourself to be a supporter of veterans' rights, and I would suggest that you get back in Washington and you sponsor a bill that gives those soldiers at Fort Hood the right to have Purple Hearts and to have their disability insurance immediately. Thank you.
Let me say on the first part, or the last part, I'll just say, first time someone's mentioned an idea to me, happy to look at it, no problem here. We just had the VA up here. We have done enormous work around the veterans groups here in the state. For example, if you're a veteran and you're living in a rural community in Alaska, as you know, we don't have a vets hospital here, we have a clinic. If you want to get that care, you'd have to get on a plane, fly to Hub, Village to Hub, up to Fairbanks, Anchorage, or even all the way down to Seattle. We decided that there had to be a better way here. And for those that are familiar with the tribal consortium that runs the Alaska Native Hospital as well as the clinics around the state, they're premier, they're incredible facilities. No one's built a new hospital, Barrow built a new hospital. Our view is that the veterans should have access anywhere at any time as they choose. If they still want to go to Seattle, go for it. Want to go to Anchorage, go for it. But if you live in Nome, and there's that beautiful hospital, you should be able to get the service that the VA has guaranteed you right across the street, because it's all the same federal tax dollars. And that is now happening here in this state, and only in this state right now, because of the work we did to make sure there was access for veterans for health care that was not available in rural communities. So on your issue on disability and Purple Heart for those in Fort Hood, great issue. I'll absolutely follow up on it. On the other issue, on education, we're probably going to disagree. You're right. I respect your view, and I believe in the public education system we have here in Anchorage. I mean, I was, now they call them charter schools that are publicly funded, but I went to Stellar. We had a choice. My parents, my mom was raising 6 kids, had to drive us, or I had to take the bike, because there's no bus system to it, because it wasn't part of it, it was a collector school. And in this city, and I use Anchorage first as an example, the choices we have are pretty broad compared to most communities with regards to our public education system, as well as our charter school system that is public education connected. That is an incredible choice option we get. I understand your view, and I don't support it. They call it choice now, they called it voucher before. It's the same thing, and I get it. But we will disagree, and I respectfully will disagree with you on that. But I also do believe, not maybe as far as you went up to Barbara Bed, but I do believe the less we do in Washington on education, the better off we are. Let the local communities make these decisions. Because this is where the decisions of what's right for the community, and I use an example many years ago when I was up in a rural community and they were doing a high school program and they were rebuilding their fishing vessels or small skiffs. That was important. There was an education program and a life issue and a war survival. I'm not sure that would have been allowed. I don't know, but they did it. And I'm glad they did it. A lot of kids know how to repair and build boats in this community. Or another issue we're fighting with right now, and that is traditional foods. Now we're going to prohibit traditional foods. So let's say you're in a clinic and you've been living in rural Alaska, and you've been living on moose meat or caribou or whatever, now we're going to tell you to use some jello and some other stuff. We get requests from elders all the time to try to help solve this problem when they go out and have care. But if they're a federally funded facility, can't do it. Which I think is ridiculous, you know? So on education, we'll probably disagree, but I think the intent of making sure we get as much opportunity for kids and making more local control is where it should be. That's why even on No Child Left Behind, I've said very clearly, when I didn't vote for it because I wasn't around when that time was passed. Second, if it comes forward and it doesn't meet what I think it needs, more local control, more activity on the local level, that does not mean I'm going to vote for that piece of legislation. So let me go down to number 5. Okay, good. You're in. You got to know your numbers.
Good evening, Mark. My name is Kathleen Stein, and I'm your opponent for the 214 Senate race as a conservative social historical opponent. And I came here of my own accord, not as a Republican friend. I want to thank you for your desire to see education uplifted, to give students the opportunity to be allowed to explore options in vocations and careers. Now I imagine your son, your 11-year-old, is the sunshine in your eyes.
It depends on what day it is. Speaking as a parent here, don't tell Jacob. Oh, he is. Sure.
What if your son Jacob, and he may have already done this, has come to you and said, Dad, do you know if Grandpa went to heaven or hell? I want to be a preacher because I don't believe in same-sex marriage, and I believe it's destroying our country. Jacob comes to you and says, I believe in the Bible, and I believe in Jesus Christ. Will you help me get trained in the public schools to become the preacher, to tell people in our country that it's wrong for same-sex marriage? He comes to you. What would be your answer?
Well, let me say this, and I'm not going to get into how I raised my family in this public forum. I'll be very frank with you. Okay? I appreciate your I will say this. Just like my mother, when my father died when I was the age of 10, she had to raise 6 kids at the age of 34. The youngest, 4 years old. And I'll tell you, we are a diverse family in many aspects. People who know us, I can feel that bubbling out there. Because just like she raised us, my wife and I raised ourselves the same way. And that is, whatever you want to do in life is going to be your choice. We are here to support you, be there for you, good times, bad times, whatever it is. Just like my mother did for me. And we are a very diverse family in many aspects. I will tell you, Christmas dinners are interesting, to say the least. But I will let him make his choice of what he wants to do, and I will support him.
What about the bill you're working on to allow that to be used and inculcated in the public school?
There's no bill. Well, time out. We're not getting time out. Everyone gets a question here. If you want to be in the campaign mode, we'll go have debates later. But let me answer your question, and then we're going to move on. There's plenty of time for campaigns, I'll tell you that. Too much time. There's legislation, yes, I support. For example, do I believe there should be discrimination based on your sexual orientation? I do not believe there should be. But I also believe, as I told employees at this workforce I was at today, I think the government goes too far in reaching into our homes and deciding how we should live, who we should sleep with, what we should do in our personal lives. So how and what I'm doing right now is when I see discrimination, you betcha I'm going to make my point clear on it. You bet. Because that is, we have different religious views, but as a civil servant, a government employee, elected official, I have also an obligation to make sure that discrimination is not out there wherever I can to make sure I get my input where I can. So, number 5, 6. And then before I take 6, who's number 6? You were 6. I think there were, okay, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. One way to keep me track here. But that's okay. 6, 7. I need 3 more. Way in the back will be number 8, 9, 10. And then we'll be back in.
Good evening, Senator Begich.
Thanks for being patient in my selection process.
Normally in the school setting, I didn't want to be called as a student, but I'll take my chances here tonight.
There's no test.
Oh, no. Okay, good. In reference to veteran, I'm a veteran, by the way, in reference to veteran being treated out in the bush communities and all that, there are some unintended consequences from this, in that the funding comes out of the VA budget. The Indian Health Service provides the care. The VA system reimburses the Indian Health Care Service.
That's correct.
And there is no cost control.
Actually, there's 2 things. It's contracted services, and we've added $64 million to the VA budget for this increment. So it's not taken out of the existing VA budget.
Right, it's just more government spending.
Well, you can take...
That's not what
Well, let me just say one quick thing on this. You can put that veteran on a plane, pay for his airfare, pay for his room and board, be away from his family, and have marginal care, because one of the part of care is being with your family, being close to your relatives when you're trying to get care. So we can argue over, I can tell you, it is much more cost effective.
Well, we can have that discussion later, because I'll discuss cost effectiveness in relation to providing specialty care for veterans in Seattle versus here in this well-funded healthcare industry in this city, for example.
Sure.
Anyway, I wanted to talk about education.
About what, I'm sorry?
Education. Which is going to be the main agenda tonight.
Yes.
You know, in Alaska, in the national testing, the NAEP testing, we are dead last among the states, for the 4th grade reading. However, we spend more per capita than any other state in this country. Senator Dunlap last week was trying to figure out how much we spend for education, because we have to figure it out, because we can't afford it. $20,000 plus per student in the state of Alaska, and that's just state funding, by the way. State funding. Its approaches, it's just less than $2 billion a year. Anyway, under the waiver, I support no child left behind. I really know that's about the words. It provides the first basis of accountability and transparency to parents and students. Under that, the state was allowed to do away with public school choice. And just a short explanation, public school choice allowed a parent to get their child out of a failing or underperforming public school. And in Anchorage School District, we have 16 of those. So the parent could be given the option from 2 successful public schools and transportation at no cost. And 244 students last year in Anchorage School District were provided that opportunity. Wonderful opportunity to get out of a bad school to get to a better school. Now these kids will be allowed to continue public school choice this year with transportation. Next year, the transportation goes away, parents are their own. The problem is, in addition to that, no new students will be allowed in the public school choice system. The doors are closed. This was a great program across the state. So what do you say to those parents who are engaged in their kids' education? And why do these kids have to stay in failing neighborhood schools? What would you do if you lived in one of these failing school neighborhoods? And by the way, charter school is very good here. A lot of the other alternative schools like Stella are very good as well. But you only have a 1 in 4 chance of winning the school lottery. And there's a list, waiting list of less than 2,000 students waiting in those schools. So what would you do if you lived in?
Yeah, let me say this. First off, and I thank you very much. When I went to Stellar was it. That was the only alternative back then. Where we are today is a much more larger array of choices. I mean, the next school after us, I think, was ABC. And then I think it was the Central converted to, I think it was a science, if I remember right. But that led the way in a lot of ways to change the way. And you know what? We did it without federal legislation. We didn't do it with some back in Washington idea to force us to be more transparent and accountable. parents and students went to the school board and said, this is what we want. Now, we didn't get the greatest school. We got the old North Star condemned school. I remember to this day, as a 7th grader, we had to cut the chain off the door. It was condemned. And if you're a 7th grader and you're going into an elementary school, you're kind of like pretty feeling bad. You know, the toilets are up high. You thought you were moving up. We had silverfish in every cupboard. I mean, I can go through the list. But this is my point, and I think it's, this gentleman's point too. The more you create local, I appreciate partially what you said in regards to, less federal, let's focus, you like the bill. But the bill did something because parents, in some ways, weren't doing as much activity as they should. Stellar exists because parents got involved. ABC exists because parents got involved. The native school in town exists because parents got involved. The tech school exists because parents got involved. The success of a school is not by legislation. It's all going to be based on how parents get engaged and how they work with the teachers. My sister taught Title I schools. Low income, at risk, high turnover rates, but she dedicated her time doing that for many years. It was very hard to get parents to participate because they're working, they don't have the time, even though kids should be our #1 priority, but the world we live in today is very difficult. So we have to think of new models. And in the kids that have choice, it doesn't prevent working with the school district to say, we want this as an additive. Nothing prevents that.
Yes, there are 14 pages of rules and regulations in the Anchorage School District regarding starting accountability for charter schools. There's one page.
But you know how those were. Let me just answer this, and I'm going to go to the next person. How are those developed? They were developed for a school board and public process. Now, you may not say that's a great process, but after serving 10 years in City Assembly, I think that is the best training for anyone serving. When the senators complain to me how tough it is, I said, go to an assembly meeting. 10 years. And then, oh, by the way, I had some school board meetings in there too. But that's how we change the system. We can't just say, Begich, pass the law, and magically it's all going to happen. If parents don't want to get engaged, guess what? Education system is not going to be at the highest level possible. We're fortunate, even though my wife runs several businesses, my job takes me all over the place. I mean, I will fly all night to get home if I have to. Overnight. 10 hours of flight to make sure I can make it to my son's recital if necessary. I will do everything possible because you only get that sliver of time. And when they're 18 and you think they're moving out, and they come back at 22, 26, 32, not experiencing myself here. But that's a challenge. But your point on the specific group of young people, or parents, there's two pieces of that equation. One, that doesn't prevent the community to say to their school board, we don't want you to stop that fundamental transportation. Yes, it may not get reimbursed by the federal government, but you should make it part of the equation. Second to this is to give up on a school where the greatest equalizer in this country is education. She's young because she's younger than me, but she's a professional. She runs the hospital out in Medicine, the foundation. She runs the foundation. She was telling me experience last night where she was bused. She was in D.C. She was bused to an inner city school. That's where she grew up. That's where she went to school. Today, she's running the foundation that's running the hospital, partners running the hospital out in the Madison Valley. She said she'd never tried that experience in her life. It gave her a different view of life. And we have to keep this in mind. What's great about public education, and I will always be, and I know there's people who support choice and vouchers, we will not agree on that. But I do believe that the greatest equalizer in this country is the ability for no matter who you are, where you come from, you can walk through these doors and get an education. That's a powerful tool. Now, there are people who say, well, I don't want to go to that school, it's not so great. Well, every system has good, medium, and not so good. Doesn't mean you throw out the bottom, because pretty soon the medium is going to be the bottom. So we have to figure out, as a community, what are we going to do to improve those schools? Because those kids have every right, like the kids who transferred out, to have the best education, because someday you're going to be, as an employer, like my wife, 30-some people working for her, have to sit there and go through lots of resumes. But she doesn't know where they went to school in their elementary days, high school. She might know where they're college, maybe they're not in college. But she's assuming they're going to get equalized education. So I hear what you're saying, but I think that point is, it doesn't stop, and poor superintendents are sorry about that, it doesn't stop as a community to go to the superintendent, the school district, and say, we want to continue this funding, even though we won't get federal reimbursement or state reimbursement. We're going to use our local dollars to make that. Nothing prevents you from doing that. Well, doesn't mean, hey, I ran 2 times for mayor and lost. Doesn't mean you give up. I got a thing on my wall that talks about persistence. I had a banker tell me in one of my first businesses, bad idea. We're not loaning you a dime. 2 years later, I sold it for 3.5 times what I paid for it, and I enjoy telling that banker every day I see him. So persistence is what makes us strong. So I hear you, but I appreciate your comment. Number 7.
Now that you pointed out that the superintendent's here.
Well, he gave the opening, so I was like,
wasn't here, but
you can say it. Nothing will be held against you. If it does, we'll have a conversation with the superintendent.
We got 5 minutes now.
Oh, we'll keep rolling. I know we have something. We'll stretch.
My name is Janice Crutchfield, and I've spoken to you on many occasions about when a child left behind and
Yes.
that will probably be your worst nightmare. But tonight I'm here. Tonight, my husband and I are here. I am the advocacy chair for the state PTA, and I would say we spin our wheels daily as volunteers to go to the schools to see why there are no PTA meetings. Why is there a meeting with just the 4 board members and not one parent out of a school with 500 kids is there to see what's going on in their school, what could be going on? It's a phenomenon that I think you see all over the place, the same 5 people do the same jobs in all different capacities, wearing the same hats. I'm a paraprofessional in the school district. I happen to love going to work every day. I work in special schools, and people say, how can you love what you do? And I said, I wouldn't be there if I didn't. And I think a lot of people see our children in the school district as cookie cutter. That's a bad school. Even though I don't get my kid there till 9 or 10 in the morning, and I'm sleeping in, the kids don't do their homework, that's a bad school. Our kids are not cookie cutter kids. An area does not necessarily make a good school or a bad school. I work with the most tremendous staff at an elementary school that was Title I, and we failed AYP every year. Every year we started off partying saying, oh, we did better than last year. Our kids did better than last year. Our special ed kids did better. Our native kids did better. In the areas that we weren't doing so well, we did better. That's the kind of mentality I think most teachers have. The community, unfortunately, looks at us as losers. If our teachers are not good, and they're never in school to see who's good and who isn't, I would welcome any parent in any school in this district, except special schools, to go to the school, see what's going on. The school failed, why the school failed. Go to the principal, talk to the teachers. Don't just sit back in your Barca lounger and criticize. Get out there and put your money where your mouth is.
I think that was commentary, so I appreciate it. I'm going to try to get through my answers on these quick. Number 8. Who was number 8? I love school settings because everyone raises their hands and very polite. That's not always the case. When I do the senior event the next day or so, it's a senior center, it's a little different.
My name is Andrea, and my daughter is in 3rd grade at Fire Lake Elementary in Eagle River. She has Asperger's syndrome, which is on the autism spectrum. I have been fighting for a year to get her the services that she needs. And you talk about education being the great equalizer. Special ed services in many of the schools here are not what they need to be. And I've tried, and I'm active in her education, and I'm at the school constantly trying to hold them accountable. And I just want to know if you have any plans to kind of help improve the special ed system nationwide, because
Yes.
it can't just be here.
That's right. Let me tell you, I have a nephew who has spina bifida. Basically, on his first few months, they basically said he wasn't going to survive. He's 30-some now. And the education system was very helpful. But here's one of the problems. The federal government mandates certain levels of special education programming and so forth, as you acknowledge. Here's what the federal government does. Say, we're going to pay 40% of it. What do they pay? 18%. Elected officials get this opportunity to say, we're providing, but they never put the cash going with it. We just did an amendment in the Appropriations Committee. I sided, what I call the back third of us, sided with Senator Kirk, Republican, because he wanted to move money from a program that really wasn't working into funding more dollars for special ed that should have been funded for years, nationally. So we've supported that to increase that capacity. That bill is now pending in front of the Senate for action. Because if we're going to make a commitment on the federal end and say, we want you as a school district to do X, and oh, by the way, we're going to tell you what we want you to do, then we better fund it. If we're not going to do that, then we shouldn't tell you what to do. And that is a fair, partnership. But the federal government is notorious for this. Tell you what to do. No Child Left Behind is a great example. Almost $100 billion of money that wasn't allocated for the last umpteen years. Even though we want you to do more, and we're going to give you less. So in your situation, on your personal end, I will make sure Thelma gives you a card, so we would be happy to follow up with you on personal end and see if there's anything on your personal case. But on the national end, put some more money. And that's what we got to do. Get the federal government to where they're supposed to be by their own law. Number 8. Whoever was number 8, you got to remember your
I
number.
was 8. 9.
No, number.
I was 8.
Okay. Oh, that's right. See what I'm doing? I know what I'm doing here. I'm crossing out the number. I'm one ahead. Okay.
Hi, I'm Lucas Monty.
And you're number?
I'm 0 and okay. I'm number 9. I am a senior at Anchorage High School. I'm 17 years old in AP US Gov. And recently, my peers and I have each just completed a letter which kind of describes the question that I'm going to ask you. And just for the sake of time,
Can you jump to the question?
in respect of other people,
Thank you.
just please answer the question. What is the single most important issue the government needs to address? And what are you going to do and willing to do to address it and make it as lasting?
Holy mackerel. That's a summary and a question. On the federal government end, I do think the biggest issue we're facing, because it touches all these pieces, basically we started to talk about your education, immigration, all this, is how we get an understanding of what we're going to do from a federal budget standpoint. Because if we don't solve this problem, the uncertainty to the business sector, uncertainty among the community, is there going to be money for special ed or not? Is there going to be road building or not? That piece is, to me, from just a kind of a mechanical part of it, is very important, because that will determine what level or not we're going to do providing services, maybe VA services, military services, road construction, education, whatever those pieces are. Because we have a tremendous challenge. When I came into office, we had $1.2 to $1.4 trillion deficit per year. Now the good news is we've reduced that 60%. Problem is, it's still $600 billion per year. We got to get a handle on that. Because if we don't get a handle on that, it'll have a ripple effect throughout everything. I mean, interest rates, how you live, mortgage payments, student loans, all those things will be impacted. Now saying that, there's one other piece, and this is more of a, we as a country, and I kind of said at the tail end of my opening, we have to get beyond the bickering, the partisan arguments of what we're about. And we can have debate, don't get me wrong, we've had some good discussion. Doesn't mean we're going to always agree. But we also have to find the common area where we can agree and move us forward. If all we're going to do is try to figure out how to get sound bites on TV or on radio or how to come to meetings and rile up people, we're never going to move this country forward to where we can be. So from a broader sense, I think there's a piece of this that we have to figure out as Americans, as Alaskans, how to put aside. I mean, I just brought Senator Campbell up from Washington State. Now, she does not support AMR. I get it. So I'm listening to the radio. All they're doing is complaining about her. She's the chair of the Indian Affairs Committee. I brought her up to Galena. Took her down the river on the Yukon to see a fish camp she's never seen in her life. Now, because she doesn't support AMR, I said, well, I should invite her. Yeah, I disagree with her on that position. She should support it, but okay, we disagree. I'm going to find out where we do agree. Interesting to note, the same commentator who was complaining about that never complained about when John McCain came here, who didn't support AMR. So we got to get out of this partisan kind of screaming and yelling at volume 10 plus. Figure out where we need to go. That's I did not dodge the question. No. You may not like my answer, but
That was not an answer. You did not answer the question at all.
you asked me. I said the budget.
Is that what you believe is the most important issue?
I think I said that. Okay. No, here's the unique thing. I love this when I run into people out in the street. They say, I sent you letters. You never respond. I said, well, actually, we keep track of everybody. So we checked, sure enough. You didn't like the answer. Now, no disrespect to you. I answered. That's my answer. There's lots of other pieces to this. Education important, metrics, but I think the budget determines a lot of that. So.
I sent you 3 emails with 73 responses.
Thank you. And we may not always agree, right? But
Every time you respond.
thank you very much. 3. Okay, you mentioned a quota. No. Go ahead.
This is a little bit lengthy, but my husband and I both work full-time. I'm very active in my child's education.
Very good.
I just want to say this piece, since I am a taxpayer.
Go for it.
And we give you the power.
Go for it.
Senator Begich, teachers, parents, and fellow members of the community. Our children's learning and quality of education is undeniably one of the most important things in their childhood. What they learn these years of K through 12 shape them undoubtedly for their lives. What they learn and how they learn it is not just what they will know, but will be our society years from now. With that said, I want to discuss past and current education policies. No Child Left Behind, Race to the Top, and now the more progressive Common Core curriculum that this district is trying to adopt portions of. These detrimental policies have gone on long enough, leaving behind generations of American children massively undereducated, while unions, politicians, and foundations have talked, thrown money, and failed. The reason why they fail is because it facilitates a loss of parental and state sovereignty in our child's education. These programs are insidious to our children's learning. Nothing, not a single program, is going to replace an involved parent, a strong community, and teachers dedicated to learning. Parents are at the top of the triangle to success and a learned student. No government program can take the place of that role. Common Core is the new set of federal education standards being pushed by the administration, and states are being coerced to adopt it, or portions of it, for the $4.35 billion earmarked for it. I'm here to discuss just some portions of it and what it means. Transformational education is the lifeblood of Common Core. Everyone from Bill Gates to GE who pushed Common Core have been talking about it. I didn't spend time in some of the quotes I have heard them say regarding transformational change in our students and education, but I will encourage you to look them up and do your homework. And they're pretty scary quotes when it comes to the minds of our children. Transformational education is defined as perspective transformation, and it has 5 dimensions: psychological, a change in the understanding of who you are; convictional, a change in the vision of your belief system; behavioral, a change in the way you live your life. Where is the student's individual thinking, traditional values, or beliefs in all of this? This type of transformational learning breaks students of their traditions, their beliefs, and establishes new ones. This is indoctrination at its best. Another program for Common Core is the data mining, where schools are poised to collect data as far as like blood type, religious affiliation, voting information, etc. These have nothing to do with their child's education. This is somewhere we have never gone before in the district, in the state, as well as in this country. We have seen these programs in other countries and they don't work. This is the cradle-to-grave system of planning our children's lives for them. This is an invasion of privacy and an overreach. Tailoring education is not the role of the government. Common Core is federalizing the school system even more than it already is, and that has never been a good trend. More data collecting examples that are being pushed is the iris scan, bio-risk bars, and the Titan monitoring system. With Common Core's new education, 3 times 4 equals 11 is an acceptable response, as teachers are encouraged to avoid hurting the feelings of the student. So wrong answers on math tests are not considered wrong. Literature is affected by taking away literature readings and replacing them with educational texts. There will be a 20 to 40% reduction in literature, and it will be replaced with things like EPA manuals. This, I tell you, will not only initiate bias and indoctrination, but will eliminate most children's love for reading. In conclusion, these are just some of the Common Core standards. Parents and local community members, I encourage you, in fact, I urge you to do your homework on this and speak out against this. It's dangerous, it's intrusive, and it's a disservice to our children and our community.
Thank you very much. Can you let us have that? Is that okay? Yeah, only because I'd like to do some very specific follow-up on some of those items within here. Let me say this, and again, I just told my staff I'm going to do 3 more questions. Even though the place I'm headed to next is going to have to wait, and that's okay. But let me say one quick thing on this. For example, Race to the Top, we had severe issues with that because of the way it was being designed. First off, it didn't impact Alaska the way they prescribed it to us in a positive way. We saw some problems. Also, for rural Alaska, it was going to have a problem. It increased the problem because it basically worked off of foundation funding and corporate giving and all this.
Now we have
But,
Common Core, they were
I don't.
all and said that you are adopting certain policies.
Yeah, let me finish here. On Common Core, there's 2 things. The school district has selected the federal Common Core. The state of Alaska has developed their own through the Department of Education through their board. So they've developed which substitutes for what we're doing on the federal level, I say we, the federal government. But so that's what's going on. What I'm doing is individual legislation on STEM education and then the issue around career choice, issues of early learning. That's what I'm focused on. So let me go. I'm going to do 3 more. Way in the back. You're number 11, 12, 13. That's not necessarily the greatest number, the last one. Go. Right there.
Good evening. My name is Dave Patterson. I'm a product of the Anchorage School District. I have 3 kids that were raised in the school district. I've been involved in school stuff for all their high school, for all their careers. My kids have been involved in all the different programs available in the school. I've been a policy, chairman of the policy committee for a charter school.
Go to your question, just to keep things moving.
My question is how are we going to fix the education system? And my context is that this is going to upset a lot of people. No Child Left Behind, core, it's irrelevant. And the reason it's irrelevant is because today in America, school is a business, and as a business, we have failed to attract the primary customer, the student. The average student in America today does not understand the relevance.
I'm going to ask you to get to the question only because, in all fairness, we've got a lot of good statements. I appreciate that. I want to respond to you. I want to give people as quickly a chance as they can. Go.
Okay.
Question.
How are we going to inspire students through relevant learning to achieve the standards in education that they should in order to be coaching members of the community?
Very good. Thank you. Let me try to respond very quickly. I think I said a little bit of this earlier. That is, part of it is, I think this parent said it very clearly, parents have to be engaged. First thing. Second, we have to be willing to be innovative in our education system. I mean, I was down in Juneau, I saw these young people doing science outside of the classroom, working with some business people on how to really use it in practical. These were 5th and 6th graders. To me, those are things you got to inspire him. My young son is inspired, not all the classes, I will tell you that, but he loves math. So he loves doing this. We introduced him to robotics. which he loved doing. He never had any view, he could actually make a robot.
State affiliate partner for the FIRST program.
There we go. So we got to figure out ways, but we also have to support our schools. For example, when there's an idea of robotics, that means parents actually have to participate, not just the same 5. And it's hard. That means parents who are actively engaged, we have to find the parent who's having a struggle to get engaged, figure out what we can do to help them. Sometimes it means actually we got to be a community. Not just get in your car, put your blinders on, go to your school, drop your kid off, go do something, come back, pick your kid up, go home. You might say, I'm going to drop you off, but I'm going to go get, John down the street because his mother's at work. I'm going to make sure she's part of it. One of the things when I was mayor we introduced with the Anchorage School District was, we did with our city employees, we said, we're going to give you time off to go work in schools, if you have kids or not. Because we thought it was important, because remember only a third of the population, usually 40%, have kids in the school system. We need people to be engaged at all levels. And it was amazing to watch young people see other adults come in and say, I want to, they go through all the security checks and all that, but they go in and you're volunteering. Where a person says, well, I don't have kids, but I'd love to be in here working in a science class. Great. I did a program, I think it was at Central, was it a month ago or so, Rotary. I went there to do math tutoring. My son's smarter than me on math, but it was fun to watch these young kids. They were excited, and these were not, you can correct me, they weren't the A students, they were struggling, but they were excited. We came there. Rotary challenged other Rotary members. They had 90 Rotary members to go do math tutoring. They challenged them to do this as a community, and we have an obligation to do this. So, number 12. Yes. That was fun. It moved quick, I'll tell you.
65% of the American people scream, don't do this. And the Congress and the Senate, the people that voted for it, you yourself just said, feet to the hand. Still, the American people don't like it. My health care has gone up like 70%. I don't have an unlimited supply of money. I can't print money. I don't have money printing machines. And even the unions that supported that are now came out and they're voting against it. How long are you going to ride this thing? When are you going to change your mind and come on to the side of the American people?
Let me respond. And I know I have one more question on this, but let me just say this too. I think we have, comment cards up the front. Don't hesitate to make comments to us. We will respond as you've got our responses. We will respond to folks. But let me say on Obamacare. When I campaigned on issues. I campaigned on getting rid of pre-existing conditions so no one gets denied by insurance companies. I campaigned on making sure that there weren't lifetime caps, so once you reach it, they cancel you. I campaigned against that, because I thought it was important that when you get coverage, you get coverage. You don't get half the coverage when you're in health care because you reach a cap. I wanted to make sure that parents want to carry their kids, let me finish, carry their kids on their policies until age 26. They didn't have to be in school to do it. They could carry their kids on it. I wanted to make sure seniors who had prescription drugs had to pay for, which is the highest cost part of their health care toward the end of life, is they had a donut hole where they would spend $2,000 to $3,000. We're closing that donut hole. We're making sure every senior now, Medicare eligible, gets preventive care at no cost. They're not going to get that because people would wait too late. They wouldn't get the preventive care. Now put that over here for a second. Are there still issues with the legislation? Yes. If you're thinking it's going to get repealed, whoever tells you that ain't giving you the truth. It's not going to get repealed. Will it get repaired or fixed and stuff thrown out that isn't working? Yes. Because I've already done it. I've already voted for pieces that, when proposed, as it started to get through the regulatory process, wasn't working. Get rid of it. I've asked for a 2-year delay on the mandatory for businesses. Not a 1 year, 2 year. I've asked for if they're, let me finish, if issues like a marketplace, like Alaska or another place, doesn't have enough competition, because remember, it's all private insurance competing for the business. It's not some grand federal program. Just as you do, I joined the exchange come October 1st. I have to join it just like everyone else. I'll pay
You don't get
premium.
a 75% contribution from the OEM.
Well, let me
My point is, we didn't want it.
let me finish.
Aren't you supposed to represent
Let me
and not be the lord over it?
listen. Let me finish. I'll say it again. When I ran for office, I talked about these issues. Well, let me finish. If you want me to finish, I'll be happy to finish. Okay? Let me finish. Let me finish, and I'm happy to answer the question. Okay? When I ran, I talked about these issues. I got elected. These are some of the issues I work on. It doesn't mean. It doesn't mean that I agree with all the elements. And there are pieces that I'm working on to modify or get rid of. That's what I'm doing. But let me make it very clear to you that why your policy is going on right now when the program hasn't even been fully implemented is another issue. Utilization is a big problem in healthcare right now. For example, people who are uninsured, I don't know where you think that gets all paid. They walk down to Providence or Regional, they go into the emergency room, they go get the most expensive care because they're uninsured, and guess who pays the bill? Everyone else. So honestly, I'm sick of the free ride. I'm done paying for everyone else. This is why, even on the healthcare program, we are working every day when we see pieces that aren't working. I have no problem in exiting them. For example, here's an issue that's going to come up. Our costs are more expensive here. We put an adjustment in. But when you look at the pro forma on it, it's going to say that there'll be an additional tax on what we call Cadillac claims. There will be probably an amendment to get rid of that tax. I'm going to support it. Just like I did on the tax that was on medical devices. I supported getting rid of that. Once you start putting a piece of legislation down, you will see pieces that work and pieces that don't work. And that's what you do. So,
Considered part of our taxable income.
well, that's right. Just,
Part of our taxable income. When we do taxes, that portion of the income is going to be part of our
no, that's not true. That's not true. The Cadillac tax is, that's what I just said. I'll say it again. The Cadillac tax, which I don't support, more than likely that's going to come up for getting rid of. This is for insurance policies that exceed a certain number. And I don't know the exact number today, but let me just give a hypothetical. So don't hold me to this. But it could be a policy you're paying $25,000 a year on. Any amount above that is where the tax is associated with. Even that I oppose. But it's not the whole thing that's showing up on your W-2. You know why it's showing up starting next year on your W-2, the cost of health care? It's because most people don't know what their employer is paying. They don't know what the fully loaded cost of health care are. Once you figure that out and people know it, guess what? You start talking to your employer and saying, how do we get these costs down? When I was mayor, the average cost of health care was going up at 11% a year. 11% a year. When I left, less than 0.5%. Why? Because we changed the program, we incentivized people. If you came to me, if Chris came to me and said, you know, I got high blood pressure, I want to lower my blood pressure, I said, great, set the goal, you meet it, we're giving you a $25, $50 Visa card. We want you to lower your blood pressure. Why? Because that's a preventable issue that can continue lower costs. We need that, lower the cost. That's how you change the healthcare system, is utilization. That's what we're focused on. If none of you have been to the Anchorage Neighborhood Health Clinic, it's an incredible facility. It's the future of healthcare. It is where we're going. When you walk into that facility, same thing with the last Canadian Health Center. You walk into that facility, same day service. But they don't just, you came in there with an aching arm, they don't just say, well, we'll give you a club for your arm and out you go. No. What else is on your list? How are you feeling? We have your eye doctor here. We have your dentist here. We have your mental health provider. They do the whole thing. Why? Because we don't want you coming back 6 times. We want to prevent and take care of you so you can take care of yourself and change your habits, maybe it's nutrition, maybe it's whatever. Those are the future models of healthcare. And that's where we're going. In this bill, we incentivize those programs versus the mills. The mills that have you come in, give you a bill. Come back next week. Have you come in, give you a bill. Come in next week. have you come in, give you a bill. Those systems are what is collapsing the healthcare system in this country. And so, the piece is, I support what I said I was going to support. We may disagree with that, but that's what I support.
But the American people didn't want it.
13.
Aren't you supposed to?
I got elected, I say it again, number 13 is next. I say it again. These are the issues I talked about. I'm in office, this is what I worked on. And there are now issues that I'm concerned with the bill, and we're working on eliminating or changing them. Okay, number 13. That's you.
Obamacare is a much huger mess, and it really needs to be done. And I would appreciate it if you could go back to the Senate and in a bipartisan way, raise the leadership and get rid of this terrible bill. If the federal government has no business doing in-house care, and it is turning into something akin to tax code which nobody can understand, and the IRS itself is going to be involved in that.
Okay, I appreciate that, but let me just say, the federal government is involved in healthcare. The VA, okay, Medicare, Medicaid, Indian Health Services. So let me just say again, the issue with healthcare in this country, the system is broken. As I said earlier, the millions of people that go in across the country that are uninsured, it is not magic that gets paid. We all pay for it. The question is, how do we create, I think someone has said that here, the personal responsibility for people to take all this. And my view is that the cost of this on the federal government, on the taxpayers, is huge. When you look at the issue of healthcare, if we don't get cost containment, management of this under some control, here's what happens. Everyone's going to be on senior at some point if you're not already. That's just how it works. We all get old. And if Medicare continues to be impacted by what's going on around with healthcare, which is what's happening, those services will be limited, and we will have less capacity to deal with this. Our veterans healthcare system, we've added more money to the VA than ever before in the last 5 years. Do they deserve it? Absolutely. Did they earn it? Absolutely. No question about it. But we fought 2 wars. People living longer, more complicated situations, more cost. We have to figure out this system on healthcare because it is a drain on our system. So we can pretend, and I know there'll be great debate back in Washington, and people who know me, I'm pretty direct, you'll hear all about repeal. That is not going to happen. Anyone that tells you that is full of it.
It
now,
will be repealed.
Now,
it will be repealed.
let me just finish. The way it's going to get fixed, the way it's going to be dealt with, is elements of it are going to be fixed on a regular basis. There's no question about it. And that's what's going to happen. No, disagree. Let me end. I'm going to end here. First, despite some of the back and forth, I love these kind of meetings. And my staff thinks sometimes I'm wondering if divine something has said it to me. In another way. But let me just say this. This is why I do these. Town hall meetings, teletown hall meetings, business meetings where I go into business to talk to employees that can't get out to meetings like this because they're working or they're unable to go to the lunch meetings. I spend a lot of time doing this. Not just to tell you what's going on in Washington, but to also hear what you have to say. And, you mentioned small in the big picture, but when you think of the folks in Fort Hood, idea I didn't have on the list. Issues around what we need to continue to do around education, which was a big chunk of tonight, which is what we want to focus on. Issues around healthcare, which there'll always be controversy because everyone thinks they're the healthiest, and I understand that. But at the end of the day, these meetings for me are beneficial to get the input that I need to try to do what I can back and watch. We're not always going to agree. Okay? That is what makes this country what it is today. We're going to disagree at times. We're going to have robust debates about issues. At the end of it, we still may not agree. But there is these moments where we will agree. And we will have to find these common grounds. Because if we do not, if you think we're in trouble now, some I know will think that today, as a country and a state, we'll be in worse shape. Because what makes this country what it is today, and what this state is today, is because all of us at times have our debates, but then we also have to focus on what we can do together. We're not always going to agree. But this is what this country is all about. Thank you very much.